It's still more than 2 hours until sunrise on Wednesday in Kyiv, where overnight low temperatures were below freezing. Around 9 million Ukrainians are forced to deal with the freezing cold without electricity, according to Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky. Russian forces continue to attack Ukrainian cities, often targeting infrastructure. One resident of the eastern city of Bakhmut near the Russian border told Reuters, quote, "You kind of get used to it. There are constant explosions, but still, I want to live a normal life." After months of steady gains by Ukrainian soldiers against Vladimir Putin's army, the fighting has reached a grinding freeze matching the winter weather. But the war continues to drive a wedge between the Ukrainian people and Russia. This holiday season, for the first time, many Ukrainians abandoned their tradition of celebrating Christmas on January 7th, according to the Russian Orthodox calendar. Quote, "This is our new tradition," one woman told the Washington Post. "We don't want to do the same thing that Russia does. So much of the world celebrates on December 25th, so we will too." Joining us now is a familiar face to the Last Word audience. Andriy Kulykov is a Ukrainian radio reporter in Kyiv who has been joining us since the early days of Vladimir Putin's war in Ukraine. Andriy, please tell us the latest about the situation in Kyiv.
The latest is that we are not definitely sure when we will have our energy supply back, because in many parts of the city, the situation differs. Like I'm now in downtown Kyiv, where we have a relative stability with heating, electricity, and hot water, while some of my colleagues haven't had this for days. My personal record was 76 hours without electricity. And believe me, this does not help. But this makes you to be even more anxious to get to your studio or to your newsroom, because they're steady right there. Many people, of course, get nervous, and many people get even more defiant than we used to be. And we're ready to resist the aggression for as long as it takes.
Well, on that point, people are still facing the worst of the winter ahead, with more Russian attacks on the electric grid very likely. And the Kremlin has said they're hoping that forces President Zelensky to negotiate. Will that Russian tactic ever work, or will people simply keep resisting Russia?
Well, the only word that I would subtract from what you said is simply. It is not simple to resist Russia under these circumstances, and people tend to join their forces. Like, for instance, when you don't have electricity or water in your accommodation for several hours or several days, you go to your neighbors, or not your immediate neighbors, but say in a couple of blocks from you, or your colleagues, or you get 7 or 8 power banks to your office, as one of my colleagues did, and while you are working, you are charging them, and then you are taking them back home. But on the whole, I think that what you said is right. We will be continuing to resist, even though this is not a very simple or easy thing.
Right. Right, and I take your point on that. But there are also signs from inside Russia that this war, now nearly a year old, is hurting Vladimir Putin's support with the Russian people. Is that helping people in Ukraine remain defiant?
Not particularly, because on the one hand, we understand that whatever the degree of the decrease of Putin's support is, the support is still overwhelming, and it might take a lot of time to say decrease the support from 90% to 80%, and even after this it will be 80%, which is huge. On the other hand, we watch the situation in Russia to the extent that it is possible, and every news about how the losses that they sustain on the front and in the rear now affect their moods is being very closely watched in Ukraine, and we find some some hope in this, but we understand very well that what is more important is our resilience and the support of the rest of the world.